And we're back once again here on the Get Foxy show. Today's guest is the lovely Sara Calabro. Sara, thank you so much for taking the time today to chat with us.
Of course. Thanks, Terry. I'm psyched to be here.
Now, Sara is a fellow acupuncturist, and I'm always curious to know how people got into this profession. So can you give us just a little bit of your acupuncture journey? Can you share that with us?
Sure. Yeah. The short version of how I got into it is I was a healthcare journalist. I was working in healthcare journalism covering the pharmaceutical industry, which wasn't as bad as it sort of sounds to me now, but it also did sort of spark my interest in other forms of healthcare. You know, you start to go down so exclusively one path that I don't know, in my case, got me curious about others. And that at the same time, I was sort of just really wanting to not be sitting at a desk all day. That was kind of a more practical side of it. And I kind of started doing some hunting around and ended up landing on acupuncture. I was in a relationship at the time with a physician who they were bringing more and more acupuncture into the hospital. And I thought that was really interesting too. So just sort of a variety of life circumstances landed me at an open house in New York City at an acupuncture school. And it just went very quickly. I think I was enrolled like a week later. So
I can totally relate to that. Those of us
nice.
Get into it. I think most of us just kind of go, oh, the switch flips and we just jump into it whole hog, and it just is life-changing.
Yes.
Now, you have created AcuTake, which is a website and a magazine, correct?
Correct. Actually just a magazine. It's all online. Yeah. When I got out of acupuncture, I think maybe my last year of acupuncture school, I just started, you know, I'm sure you've had this experience too. Your friends, your family, they start getting very curious about acupuncture. And I was wanting to have things I could send them, you know, like, oh, read this, and then that'll clear it all up about what I've been spending, you know, the past 3 years of my life doing. And I wasn't finding that. I wasn't finding it in a way that I felt comfortable sending to people. So I was like, this has to exist. You know, acupuncture is infinitely fascinating. There's tons of information, questions people are asking me, and I'm not seeing the thing I wish I could send. So yeah, I kind of combine my, you know, as I said, I came from a background in journalism. I'm sort of, you know, looking for the way I can combine these things. And that's what I did. So I created AcuTake. It's, I believe it continues to be the only, was certainly the first consumer acupuncture publication. So but it's all online, acutakehealth.com.
And I've seen some of the first work that you put out there on that website, and I think it's fabulous. And everybody, all of the Get Foxy show listeners, if you haven't seen AcuTake, check it out. I wanted to have Sara on the show today because she has a new podcast that I feel y'all need to know about, and it's called Press This Point. Can you tell us a little bit more about it, Sara?
Sure. So Press This Point, yeah, as you said, Terry, it's a new podcast. I have been wanting to start a podcast forever. I've been just sort of a real podcast junkie for, I don't know actually when it started. I was just talking to somebody about this. Maybe 5 years ago, I just got really kind of hooked on them. And I'm one of those people that's always saying, oh, did you listen to this? Did you listen to this? And I'm sure I'm being sort of annoying to people because some people just aren't into podcasts. But I've been very into podcasts and wanted to get into the whole thing. You know, I was curious about the technical side of it. Interested in the industry of podcasting, all of that. And I just was wanting, though, to do it in a way that I felt was adding something new. I didn't want to do something that I had seen done before. And I started looking at, okay, what aspects of the acupuncture world might be adding a unique contribution. And something I kept coming back to was these point posts that I had been doing. I had been doing social media posts and some articles on, at the time on AcuTake, it was a series that I had. It was called Why Are You Doing That Point? And it was, they were articles that would explain why does an acupuncturist choose this particular point? And, you know, the response to those was great. It was just, I don't know, there's something about sort of this I don't know, I think there's something very focused about it. There's this point, I want to understand that. So that's kind of how it started. And then over time, though that was great, but I felt there was sort of a limitation in the sense that that's why an acupuncturist is choosing a point. Great, fascinating. But what can a regular person actually do with that? They can perform acupressure on that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. So I started gearing it more toward acupressure and explaining the acupuncture points, but in more of a self-care way that people can actually understand this and then take action, use it themselves. So all that to say, I thought that would make a great podcast because they're intentionally short, super quick episodes. We're talking 5-6 minutes. Just every episode focuses on one point. I tell you what it can help with, how to find it, and a little bit of the background on the ancient theory behind the points. And then of course, how to perform acupressure on the points. So I'm hoping it can be a big help to people. And it sort of captures my fascination with these points. So it remains really interesting for me, but I think also very helpful for people.
That is brilliant because I've seen so many podcasts out there on Chinese medicine, but nothing terribly actionable for the average person who doesn't know a whole lot. So this is good stuff.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, I hope so. I hope people respond to it. So far, I mean, I've only been doing it about 3 weeks or 4 weeks. And so far the response has been good. So we'll see, but I'm going to keep moving forward.
Well, this is good stuff because, well, I mean, as far as content goes,
yeah.
I mean, how many points have we got? I mean, there's
361 acupuncture points. So I have content built in for a long time for sure. We'll see if I get to all of them, but I'm definitely going to start with the ones that, us as acupuncturists that we tend to visit the most and go from there. But no, it's true. It is sort of an endless wealth of content. So it's a good subject in that way.
You bet. Well, when you start getting into some more of the extra points, I'm definitely going to be paying a lot more attention because, I know all the heavy hitters and I know the standard points.
Yep.
I didn't get as much training on some of these more curious extra points. So that'll be kind of fun, but I'm still going to be tuning in because, there's always so much more to learn about each point.
Yeah, it's true. And I hope for acupuncturists that it can be, certainly they might be interested in it themselves, but I imagine a lot of the acupuncturists will know the things I'm saying, but I'm hoping it can be a tool for them to refer to their patients and say, in between our treatments, here's something to kind of keep your mind on the acupuncture game and again, the self-care aspect of it. So I hope acupuncturists find it interesting in that way.
I think so. I think it'd be a fantastic tool to be able to refer patients to.
Great. Yeah.
What are your top 3 favorite points, Sarah?
Oh, of all time, I couldn't say. I have some in mind that I think maybe for your audience might be helpful. They are some of my favorites, but of all time, I'd have to go back and really think about that. But there are some that I wanted to point out to your audience because I think that they could be helpful.
Please.
One of them is, I'm sure you use it often, is spleen 6. I'm mentioning ones that I do have episodes on because I want to make sure that, we're not going to be able to cover it all here. So I just want to make sure that people can go and get more information on these. But spleen 6 is actually the episode that just went up today. So anybody who's interested in that can just go to pressthispoint.com, and that has all of the episodes with photographs, which I'm finding will prove important because audio is a nice medium. It just, with this really does, you need a visual for a lot of these. So I do my best to articulate where the points are, but hopefully those photos in combination with the episode will be great. So anyway, spleen 6 is a point on the lower leg. It's on the inside of the leg. And it's just a great point for a lot of different things. As you know, it's one of probably the most widely used acupuncture points: general wellness, stress, digestion, a lot of things that you can think of. One of the things that comes up a lot for, though, is women's health and gynecological issues. So any, PMS, painful periods, infertility, low libido, anything sort of related to reproductive, sexual health, anything like that. So your audience might be interested in that. It is also useful for men as well, for men's health, sexual health in men. So guys can use that point too, and get into that on the episode. So I would check out Spleen 6 for sure.
Yes, indeed. That
Yeah.
I use that a lot in my clinic. And just as a personal anecdote, my poor wife, when we were first married, suffered a lot with endometriosis
Yeah.
and massive, massive, debilitating menstrual cramping. She called me from work. She was underneath her desk
Oh,
in tears, curled up in a
worst.
ball, and was asking, is there anything I can do? Well, here's the point. Spleen 6. I told her where to find it. She massaged it, and 20 minutes later, she was able to come out from her underneath her desk.
Wow. Oh, yeah, that's brutal. But no, exactly. That would be a perfect candidate. She would be a perfect candidate for that point. So Spleen 6 is one. Others, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but another would be pericardium 6. Probably most classically indicated for nausea. Those people might know about those bracelets that they sell in stores for seasickness. Those bracelets are actually pressing pericardium 6. They don't always say that's what it's doing, but that is sort of the science behind those points. So classically indicated for nausea. The reason I personally, and I end up recommending it a lot actually, though, is also for another indication, which is anxiety. A lot of us suffer from anxiety. Classic anxiety, but also anytime we have a health thing going on, there's usually an anxiety component to that. So I almost always recommend that point to people regardless of what they have going on. And pericardium 6 is on the inside of the wrist. You can learn specifically where that is on the episode, but yeah, it's on the inside of the wrist. I love it because it's so easy to do and no one knows what you're doing. A lot of times if I'm on a plane or a bus, you start feeling anxious or nauseous. You can very subtly do this point without drawing much attention to yourself. So that's a great one. Last one I love is Kidney 1. That was actually the very first episode of Press This Point, so please forgive any any audio or just, I don't know, me sort of fumbling more than usual on that one. But Kidney 1's an awesome point. It's on the bottom of the foot. It's the only acupuncture point on the bottom of the foot, so it's kind of just interesting in that way. And you can find the exact location there, but that's a great point for insomnia. I know a lot of people suffer with insomnia. I don't know about you, Terry, but in practice, I found that probably insomnia was, I don't know, maybe 50% of the people, not necessarily coming in saying, I want help with insomnia, but if you inquire and say, how are you sleeping? Most people, oh, I never sleep, and they don't even think of it as a issue, but it's almost just become so common that people don't even think to mention it. So, so that's a great one. Yeah, Kidney 1, and Kidney 1 also is good for anxiety as well. So just helps to sort of ground us. Like I said, it's on the bottom of the foot. So if we have a lot swimming around in our heads, which most of us do, Kidney 1 is a good point for that.
You bet. My wife will kind of keep an eye out when I'm traveling. She'll subtly see me put my thumb right there on pericardium 6.
Yeah.
Are you getting car sick?
No, exactly. I know. I find myself doing it all the time, but I'm so glad I can do it with it. I have to say that is probably, I say this in the episode, but that's probably the point I use the most. It really, and everybody needs to try these things out. You will find with acupressure points, some work better for some people than others. And a point that works great for you might not work great for me, but for me, at least, pericardium 6 really, really helps me. So it's gotten me out of a lot of jams. So.
It's one of those that I use a lot in my practice with aesthetic and facial acupuncture as well. Well, that and Spleen 6 and occasionally Kidney 1. Since we're doing a lot of work with the face, Kidney 1 helps ground that person, bring a lot of that energy back down into the body so we're not getting headaches or anything like that.
Definitely. What's the thinking behind pericardium 6 on the
pericardium 6? A lot of times I have patients who are very nervous about me putting needles in the face.
Sure. Yep. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, taking care of pericardium 6 definitely helps settle some of that anxiety. And then, of course, Spleen 6 with its tonifying properties is so fantastic for tonifying blood and circulation in the skin. It's a wonderful point as far as aesthetic and facial acupuncture goes. Nice. So yes, such good points. I'm excited to see what other points are going to be coming up on your podcast. So I encourage all the Get Foxy Show listeners, check out Sara's podcast, Press This Point. Sara, I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests.
All right.
What does Foxy and being Foxy mean to you?
So you gave me a little bit of a heads up about this. So I was wrestling with how to answer that, because I know you focus on facial cosmetic acupuncture. So sort of an external foxiness, and I love that's so important for all of us. But to me, I think what getting foxy means is to be foxy is to be curious and to question things. With health, there is so, and understandably, that tendency to defer to authority figures, or an authority figure could be a doctor, or it could just be something you read. And it's not to say that that information is not valuable, but I think getting curious about your own health and being willing to ask questions when something doesn't feel right to you. If you're told something or you read something that you're like, what, that doesn't resonate with me, or that just hasn't been my experience, having the confidence to question that and to push back on it. So that to me is one, asking questions, being curious. Another would be to listen to your body, sort of a similar thing in the sense that a lot of times it's like, whatever it is, you get put on a certain medication, or you've decided you're going to commit to a certain exercise regimen or a diet, but you don't feel that good, and but we're like, no, I committed to this, I'm going to keep doing it. And I think just there is some of that pushing through is valuable sometimes, but I think there can be that line of it, just pushing through for pushing through's sake is not necessarily the best thing for us all the time. So being foxy is having the courage and the confidence to listen to your body, because that can be difficult sometimes in the face of the media and advertising messages that we're getting all the time. So that's what I would say.
Has there ever been a time where you yourself didn't quite feel so foxy?
Oh God, like daily.
What did you do to reclaim that?
Wow, that's a good question. I mean, so many times. I mean, I think this is for me at least, this is sort of a daily experience of going through my life, either behaving a way that a minute later I sort of wish I had said something differently, or reacted differently. But I think, my go-to tools are certainly exercise, meditation. I've been experimenting with incorporating actually the acupuncture into my meditation, which has been really interesting. Something I'm going to talk about on an episode, but just this idea of visualizing the points, not actually pressing them, but visualizing the points and meditating on them in that way. So yeah, I mean, just sort of my go-to health tools, exercising, meditating, eating right, being willing to go back to the person I may have said something I didn't want to say in that way, and being willing to own that and acknowledge it. Those are, I guess, the tools I have for re-foxying myself after I've failed.
I love it. Re-foxying. I'm stealing that term.
What can I ask you the same question? What do you do when you feel that you don't feel so foxy, and then how do you get yourself out of that?
One of the things I've found for me is, well, I mean, you can, if you're watching the video version of this, you can see I'm kind of dressed up. I've found that sometimes if I take the time to just get a little gussied up and take the time to make myself look good and then go out into the public, oftentimes I will get compliments from folks say, man, it's so rare that we see a guy dressed well nowadays. And that I found that part of myself that has this aesthetic sensibility enjoys that acknowledgement, and that brings me energy, and that gives me a little bit of drive, a little bit of pep. So
Yeah.
being able to receive a compliment is very helpful. And for a while there, I was it's like, I don't want to hear that, you know. And I
Hmm.
think a lot of people end up that way, where they shun compliments, but those are gifts that people are trying to give you. I mean, if you don't receive those, eventually people stop giving those gifts to you.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, for me, that's one thing. Um, Going out and getting massage work done, acupressure, or acupuncture, chiropractic work. I have a
Hmm.
fantastic chiropractor here in
Oh, awesome.
Windsor, Colorado, and she is just awesome. So I refer plenty of folks to her as well. But yeah, taking care of yourself, and then of course I also have a spiritual practice. So going to church, praying, uh, getting in tune with the divine is something that I find very helpful for myself.
Hmm. Cool.
So that's my answer to your question.
Thanks for sharing.
If you could share one piece of advice for our listeners on how to stay foxy, what would that piece of advice be?
I think I know for me, the thing that keeps me going in the face of whatever questioning or whatever challenges I'm dealing with at the time really is, I said this before, but I can't really underscore it enough, is curiosity. I mean, that's the thing that when I get either down or sort of tired with whatever routine I'm in, and I'm looking for inspiration, I'm confused, I'm looking to understand something, staying curious, constantly, I don't know, learning all the time, podcasts, books. That's the thing that keeps me engaged with the world. So I think staying curious is often a way out of a lot of things. I heard, I don't know where I heard it, so I'm sure this should be attributed to somebody, but just sort of the it was a conversation around depression, and that a lot of depression, there's a real sort of bored with life component of that going on. At least that can feel like the experience of depression sometimes. And for me, when I feel bored, a way out of that is to get curious. And so for me, yeah, it's sort of the solution to a lot of difficult times.
I can totally agree with that. Growing up on the ranch that I did up in northern Wyoming, we had some foxes that denned not too far from our house. And I will tell you that foxes are very inquisitive,
Mm,
curious animals. And they check things out, and they look around. I mean, they're very inquisitive. So I think I would agree with that completely, in the fact that yes, curiosity embodies that foxiness.
hmm.
And when we get curious about things, well, then we start learning more things. As we ask the questions, the answers appear. And
Yeah.
those can be life changing.
It's really true. And you never know. I mean, sometimes, you can go a month, listen, read, and consume a bunch of stuff, and it's just sort of what you're doing. And then I don't know, there can be that one thing that you consume a certain day, and it just hits you in a way that sort of shifts things. I can actually share that's sort of what happened with the podcast. Actually, as I said, I've been a long time sort of podcast junkie, but I've been consuming podcasts for many years and reading a lot about the industry for a long time. But I don't know, maybe 6 months ago, whenever I sort of got this idea for this, I read this one article that was talking about how they thought, as podcasts became more ubiquitous and more people, just the way we watch TV, people would be willing to consume a podcast, that the shorter form content might be helpful, because there are a lot of longer podcasts out there. But as people get more comfortable with, flipping through the apps, just they'll listen to a podcast without thinking it's that big of a deal. Shorter content might get popular, So I was like, oh, shorter content, what's kind of something that is related to my field that could be positioned in a shorter way. And so that was actually the thing I read that led to me coming up with Press This Point. So you just never know where that little nugget's going to come from.
Well, there you go, ladies. Press This Point podcast by Sara Calabro. Check it out. I will have the link in the show notes. And Sara, you can believe it, our time's up already. So I want to thank you so much for taking the time today. I know you are rocking and rolling. You're a busy gal, and you're just like me. We're out there slinging needles, helping people and working those points. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you, Terry. I really appreciate you having me.